record the webinar. Please, if anybody has any objections on this, please let us know by writing your objection in the chat. Otherwise, we will proceed with the recordings. I don't spend too much time on the context of core vocabularies. You already know them quite well, as what is the intention. Next slide, please. Next slide, we want you all know the objectives. You all know our current assets, and here, as I said earlier, we paid special focus on trying to consolidate the information that appears not only on Core Vox but also on other vocabularies such as the core criterion, as well as the application profile. This is also the issues that we're going to tackle based on this consolidated diagram. Next slide, please. And what is on the agenda for today? What is the intention? Our intention is to tackle core location, issues on core location or issues on core public organization, and start a discussion about core public event. You may raise the question, why are not tackling core person and core business here? We think that the nature of the issues that we are going to tackle are more consistent and provide us some a semantic flow, as a contextual flow that is more appropriate in order also to discuss other things that we have the intention of addressing the 7th of November, that has to do with the core public service. Having said that, and also in the context of connecting and the consolidated diagram our vocabularies, we are planning forthcoming webinar on the 27th of November on DCAT-AP, where a number of issues are raising also from the forthcoming version of DCAT-3. And then next year, we would like to launch a webinar dealing pending issues on core person and core business, and potentially some issues about CCCV. So having in that sense to try to close the cycle of the pending issues and come up with consistent and flow, consistent connections between Core Vox. So I pass right now the floor to my colleague Midio to elaborate more on this.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you, Midio. Yes.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, in this slide, as you can see, we depict the dependency between core vocabularies. The most striking, indeed, you can see it's core location, because core location keeps as two main classes that are used: address and location. Address, it's used indeed, will be used in a core public event, in core public organization, which we discussed today, but also in other core vocabularies like business or person, etc. Core public event and core public organization that we are going to present or discuss today have also an impact on CPSVAP if we want to, for certain issue that we are going to discuss. And that's for us, that's the flow. So for today, we discuss core location and public event and public organization. So then we can assess some issues that have an impact on CPSVAP. On the other hand, you see that there are issues that can come, or at least have an impact between each other. If we talk about DCAT-AP, you see that has an impact on other type of vocabulary like corporate training evidence, etc. So we try to go now dig down to CPSVAP, that we want to basically have this webinar together with DCAT-AP until the end of the year, and then assess the rest, like core business or core person, which are a bit more disjoint from the rest of the of the, let's say, dependency. I hope I've been clear. If not, please stop by and I can clarify. Having said that, we enter soon on the updates on the core location and core public organization. In this sense, I'm going to present now what is the current status of core location, the current diagram with its version 2.0. In this diagram, what I highlighted is mostly the address class and the admin unit class, which we will talk within the next issues. You see how they are connected through the, let's say, the RDF resource, because we use the serialization, RDF serialization over there, is as a register address or address pointing to an address class. And this address class as a reference towards an admin unit class. We'll go down now towards the respective issues. First of all, the attribute for street name and number. That's an issue that's been opened in the context of e-procurement. And in that context, it was asked if the definition of local true fair could be enough indeed to represent a complete address. In that sense, a full address proposes a complete address per se, but it's much more than that. So the recommendation over there is to concatenate true fair, because true fair represents normally, as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, a name of a passage or a way from one location to another. We proved as an example Avenue des Champs-Élysées on the right-hand side. However, it misses the number of the street. On the left-hand side, you have some examples. For example, Willem van Milenbergstraat 21. And the number can be taken by the locator designator. The locator designator includes a bit more than that. You can see on the right-hand side, the definition is a sequence of characters which identify locator. So might include also the building number, but also the apartment number. And as an example, you can have flat 317 Bridge Street. Let's say the locator is flat 317. So you can concatenate the true fair with the locator designator in order to make the combination of the street plus the number 21. However, you need to take into account that since the true fair and locator designator in this moment for this issue, I have different type of data types. Of course, you need to make it as an overall type text, because you might need to translate the street in another language. It happens that some countries have double language to express street names. So if you need to have one full name of the street, concatenated with the street number. That's just a recommendation, of course, to do it. It's not really a proposition, but it was open on GitHub. Thank you for opening this. It's also good to discuss these issues that can be easily solved on this slide. Any comment on any? This is being requested formally by e-procurement side, and normally should be, let's say, it's been accepted unless there are other issues that can come over with it.
Georgia asks, why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Rather than using the full address.
Rather than
using the full address.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the full address is already a property to be used when we have like addresses written as a string, okay? I guess that the modeling here proposed is to actually try to structure the elements of the address, according to the INSPIRE directive, by the way, in the name of the street, so the toponym, okay, and then the civic number, okay. So concatenating just these two, yeah, probably. I don't know. It sounds strange to me. That's
no. The full address definitely is a complete address. As you can see, I put it.
Yeah, with the postcode and the city.
People, let's say, member states can already use that. But if they want to just select part of it, they could even combine trueFair with the locator designator. That's an option. Huh? It's not mandatory. It's just an option if you want to select only part of the address. That's it. It's not, I remember it was from eForms side, this request.
Yes, I can intervene here. It's because we were working on mapping the standard forms, and actually it's the same in eForms. But in the standard forms, when we had the XML, and actually that picture is from that standard forms, and we have the street and the number. There are also other tags for the address, but this most specific one should have been mapped to some attribute, and we didn't use full address. We wanted to use the full address, but we didn't use it because of the definition of it, because there it says the complete address written as a string, and this is definitely not the complete address, it's just the street and the number of it. And we decided, thank you Omidio for this, we decided to use, I think, the locator designator, I think, because there in the example it says that it can have the street and the number, and we go on with this.
Yeah, again, it's an option. So either you use the full address or you can use part of it.
Geert has his hand up.
Yeah.
I don't know if you hear me.
Yes. Yes.
Well, locator designator is only to be used for house numbers, bus numbers, apartment numbers, floor numbers, and so on. And you can concatenate these, but it's not to be used for a street name.
But it says
according to Inspire.
Yes, sorry, I saw that in the usage example. It says flat 317 Bridge Street, and that's why we assume. But of course, if I read the definition, it's a number of sequence of characters that uniquely identifies the locator within the relevant scope.
And the relevant scope is the street, the thoroughfare name. So, in my opinion, if you read if you look at the model for the structure address, there is an association within scope, and the meaning of that is to say, for example, this is the bus number within this house number, or this is the house number within this street, or this is and so on.
Okay, so probably
I don't think it's to be used. The locator designator is to be used to include the thoroughfare, because there is a separate attribute for it.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
In my opinion,
we're gonna have to look through this as well.
And of course, if you you have the full address also, and there you can put the whole string, including the municipality name, the postcode, everything.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I proceed then on the next slide. This slide. It's about
video.
Yeah.
On the previous slide, what is the conclusion? Is the conclusion
the conclusion is
look at
that if they cannot use the address, which could include the entire let's say address then locator designator could be used together with the trueFair, because the trueFair it's only about the street name.
So what is your conclusion? We're keeping this proposal, or you're rethinking?
But, from what I understand from Andrea, is to concatenate the two should be enough.
Okay.
I don't see the chat while I don't see the chat while presenting. Just to tell you.
No, here I see Geert has his hand up.
Maybe if you want to make this clearer, you could change this a bit because now in the definition, now I see a number of or sequence of characters that uniquely identifies the locator within the relevant scope. The relevant scope can be anything.
Okay.
If you look at this, the relevant scope can be the municipality, and in that case, you could include in the string the thoroughfare name. But if you look in the specification, the inspired specification, I really don't think locator designator is to be used with the street name.
But the example brought there, I don't know, I don't remember if it was coming from the inspired person.
Yes, because the flat 317 Bridge Street, it includes the thoroughfare name, so it's maybe a bad example. But if it comes from Inspire, I don't say anything.
But it's if the building number is included inside the locator designator, it should be sufficient to express such need. If the building number is.
Yes, but in the example, I see Bridge Street. This is part of the entire address that I would put in the thoroughfare field.
But the locator is flat 317. Huh?
Okay. Yes.
The locator is flat 317, and so there is
I understand
part of
now. Yeah.
17
makes
is.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem.
I didn't read the usage note that well, but that makes it clear, I think. Yes.
Okay.
So it's already in the usage note that it shouldn't include the thoroughfare name. Yes.
Okay. So move on.
Yeah. So this issue is being requested because between the old core location vocabulary on W3C side and the new one, there are some changes, especially in the data types of certain properties of address class. You see on the right-hand side, on top, an example of address ID, which has a range in the old W3C location vocabulary as a range literal, while in the below on the right-hand side, you have address class with the four properties, which together have been changed from literal towards string. We are talking about address ID, locator designator, PO box, and postcode. So that's why it's connected to the previous issue. So the request is to change this data type of strings, make them as RDFs literal. So in order to, because first of all, literal is compatible with the string if you consider it as a sequence of character. We would the idea is to change back so we keep compatibility with old W3C specification. And simplify the use of data types. The data type string is used mostly in location now. And so the idea is to have at least literals, which is mostly used in many of the other core vocabularies. Being a literal yet doesn't oblige to have let's say a language for it. So normally string is still enough compatible with the RDF literal. And in that sense, we would like to keep compatibility with the old specification, which are not anymore maintained, and simplify at the same time the use of data types.
Here?
It's maybe a bit strange because literal can be used for a lot of things. Huh? Because it's a type string. You can use it to say that the string is an integer. You can use it to say that the string is a URI.
We don't indeed. If you think about postcode, the postcode could be even a number, but we still put it as a string. So the idea of a literal will give a bit of more freedom if member states want to type it as a number. And in any case, that's why we want to give it. It's more compatible as well with the previous specification.
Maybe it's also interesting then for address ID, because there maybe you want to say this is the Inspire ID, or this is the, I don't know, whatever kind of ID. Because with a type string, you can also say this string is, for example, an ISBN number, or this string is, I don't know, a national number for a person. So maybe here you can say this address ID then is a string, and this identifier should be interpreted as, for example, the official address number in Belgium. I don't know.
Yeah. Same for
maybe it's a bit more flexible. That's true. Yes.
Same for PO Box. Certain country use a combination of characters. Others use sometimes numbers. If I remember well, maybe Ireland. But anyhow, yes, it will give that freedom. That's what the intention as well.
There's just one thing. It's if address corresponds to address representation in Inspire. In Inspire, this is not.
It will be a character name in Inspire, if I remember.
Yeah, it's just a character string, and for address ID, you have a real identifier. You have a link with an identifier, an Inspire ID, actually.
Okay. But
Georgia?
Yeah, since this discussion about different types of identifiers for the same location and address, probably, because probably they are national identifiers of the addresses, while there is the Inspire and so on and so forth, probably we may think to have a class identifier which has its value and its type, okay? So, and the organization probably that also released the identifier. I don't know if we used already this pattern in other, for example, this applies also to the organizations, but also for the people, to be honest, depending on the different databases. In people, at least in Italy, for example, we have a unique people identifier now for the base registry we have, but then we have also the task code, which is an identifier of people. You know, we may think to have this pattern as an element that is shared across the vocabularies.
Matthias?
Yeah,
Matthias?
hello. So, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So just a general comment on when you do this kind of removing a more specific requirement that it to be a string to make it literal. That means that you are basically leaving the field open for implementers to do a variety of different things. It means also that when you want to use this core vocabulary in a specific country, maybe you need to provide an application profile for that region or country to specify that in our setting, we want to do this. We want to use a string here and not an integer. To help implementers, then I would propose that you provide like a note of different use cases here to clarify why this is so general, literal, and not a string. That will help people to make a decision on the national level, for instance, to decide which one you want to recommend.
Okay, we can add a better usage note in the for those properties.
Perfect.
And here it is again.
Yeah, sorry about address ID again. The suggestion to make it to have a class for identifier, I think that's a good suggestion. It's the same in the Inspire address representation. With an extra note, the address ID there is the ID of the official address. It is not the ID of this address, this specific address representation.
I lost.
Okay. Okay, so we'll take note of that. Emilio, changing the address ID to a class identifier, would that be something you can do?
But if there is no for the other members, it's fine. We could take it. Yes, we could take it
We
on board.
already have that in. We already.
But this kind of pattern that, yeah, this kind of pattern in like Georgia was mentioning is been adopted already in core person in other vocabularies. So yes, I would say makes sense in that sense. Yeah.
Okay.
With the extra note, and that is, it's the address ID, not of the. It is not the ID of the address representation. It is the ID of the corresponding official address, which is a different thing. Yeah?
Okay, we'll take it into account. Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah. So that's the admin unit. Let's say this issue is about admin address representation in a way with admin unit. I was an issue that we were discussing with Gert. Here, the idea is to be more in line with the Inspire specification. As Gert already mentioned previously, address is being always mapped to address representation from Inspire. The Inspire diagram, you see it on the right-hand side. Yeah? And in this case, in some time ago, we created an admin unit class, as you can see here. And this admin unit class should be used when member states have the need to specify a particular code, which doesn't fit in admin unit L1, L2, because now admin unit L1, L2 are pure text. However, as Gert indeed, let's say, you were saying, it's not possible to express a city per se when I want to describe an address. Gert, can you comment on this first? So it's
yes, my point there was that what's missing actually here in address and CEMIC address is admin unit name. An address, as it is mapped on address representation, it's a more, let's say, unstructured way to communicate addresses, which means that you can use strings, string for thoroughfare name and string for post name and so on, rather than working with a structured address. As you can see, Inspire also has a structured address with address components, with admin units, with postal descriptors and so on. That's not what we are doing here, what CEMIC is doing, I suppose. What CEMIC is doing is mapping on address representation, more loosely way to convey what the address, which also means, in my opinion, and that's also what is done in Inspire. If you look at the address representation from Inspire, you see there admin unit of the type geographical name, which is actually a language string. And this allows you to give a municipality name literally, rather than by reference, rather than associating it with an object called admin unit. This is something for the structured address. This is not something you do if you work with address representation. And here, I think the problem is, first of all, we don't have in CEMIC address now, there is no admin unit name. Admin unit 1 and admin unit 2 are not suited for that. Admin unit level 1 is for countries. Admin unit level 2 is for regions, like, for example, Flanders. So there is no admin unit in text form for municipality name. There's only the link with admin unit where there is no name either. That's one problem. But the main problem is here, I think, that we are trying, CEMIC is trying to make a sort of mix between a structured address and between a simple address representation here. I would leave out this admin unit link, and I would just incorporate in CEMIC address an attribute called admin unit level 5, for example, and that's then the municipality name.
But indeed, Gert, the idea was to, since you say now level 5, all these levels usually are encoded in a country. They should be encoded in a country, at the country member state level. And that's why the purpose of the admin unit class, because there you can specify on different level the, let's say, if you have a much more classification, you can define different levels of that. And I understand
that's
now.
That's true, but then you are what you are doing is you have address representation. You think, well, that's a nice way, a simple way to convey an address, and then I say but for municipalities we will make it structured. So that's trying to have the advantages of both worlds. I wouldn't do that. We use address representation in Oslo just to convey the address for labels, to put it on maps, just to say this is the address of the building, not in a structured way with a reference to a separate admin unit. And the admin unit level 1 and admin unit level 2, you can see that as specification or specific specializations of admin unit, like it's represented there in address representation. So I know it's convenient, but then it would also be with the association with admin unit. Yeah, it looks convenient, it looks nice, structured. But then somebody could say, well, why not then including also a link to postal descriptor? Why not including a link to thoroughfare name, where you can just specify this is the Dutch name, this is the French name, and with one identifier, with a thoroughfare name identifier. That's the structured address. I don't think CEMIC has to go in too much in that direction, because then you are just you're not working with a simple address representation anymore. You're working with a structured address.
Indeed,
and a mix of the two is not a good idea, I think.
Matthias?
Yeah, so
Matthias?
I agree. Yeah, I agree with the Get on this, that this is to be a mixture of things. An address is two different things. An address is a location, while an admin unit seems like to be much closer to a public organization. And of course, we can have relations between organizations and addresses or sites, as you have in that vocabulary. But here in the pure address instance, we shouldn't duplicate information.
The idea is
Georgia?
not to duplicate.
Sorry, but can you hear me, Max? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, there were some guidelines from the Inspire group, I think, in, I don't remember the program, the name of the program, and they are the RDF guidelines for Inspire. And I think that the idea to collapse the address, let me say, as a spatial object, okay, and the address representation, meaning a string, okay, it comes from those RDF guidelines, I think, because they decided to use the address class as it was defined in the core location at W3C layer, okay, meaning a spatial object, probably. But also there was this address representation that Gert was describing. And I think they decided to collapse in one unique concept, which is addresses. So let's check those guidelines, because those guidelines are the implementation in RDF of the Inspire specifications. Okay, so if we follow those guidelines, I think we can be safe also here in CEMIC. I can tell you that in general, if I look at data sets, or even open data sets, you may find the address of a location, which is a string, okay? But if we have a base registry, for example, of all the national addresses defined as spatial objects with the specific identification, we may also refer to that object when defining an address, okay? In other data set that they use it as a string or as a name. So, I mean, I understand the point that mixing the two things from a semantic point of view is not really nice, probably, but I would like to highlight these guidelines and the fact that in the practice, probably these two concepts are sometimes one unique concept.
Geert again?
Maybe indeed interesting to see in the guidelines what they say about that, yes. But the only thing is now that we have, for example, admin unit level 1, admin unit level 2 as a name. So now you can convey with CEMIC an address and say what a country is in text form, and you can say what a region is in text form, but you cannot say what a municipality name is in text form, and not within the same object. You have to make a hop to another thing, admin unit, which is indeed something between an organization and a place. And there, then you have to find the name. It's not there right now, but you could include it. So I think it's
Is that not the
you have to
post name,
decide.
Geert?
Sorry?
Is the municipality is not the post name?
No, that was
Or-
also in the original version of CEMIC. This was confusion, I think. We saw indeed in the original CEMIC that the post name was also seemed also to be used for municipality names.
Yeah.
But in Belgium, that at least in Belgium, it's not correct. A post name, and you can use the municipality name as a post name, but the municipality name is also a possible part of the address. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it's against what is intended by Inspire. Inspire did not intend to use post name to mix post name with municipality name.
Okay.
So at least we need something like admin unit name next to post name. And I know in some countries there is a special post name, but in other countries the municipality name is used in an address rather than a post name. There does not exist a post name. A postcode, yes,
Video.
but not.
A video. So, but the conclusion is that we need to look back to the RDF guidelines for Inspire.
Yes.
Yes.
And so we'll keep this proposal on hold until we have done that
Okay.
investigation. Yeah.
Clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's then move on.
Yes. Next.
I see Bert has a hand up. Is this still on this?
It was
one?
just a very quick comment that is not directly to the discussion on the admin unit level, but indirectly in the sense that an address the address here in CEMIC can be used to encode as well addresses outside the European Union, and that's important that we can do this. That it's so the admin unit level, that's something that we typically within our own country and member state can control, and we know, and we can find resources of it. But I don't think we will have this ever for Vietnam and China and Japan and so on, for every country in the same way, in the structured way. So therefore, the unstructured aspect is I think important to maintain. That's just as a usage, as a scope of the usage.
Okay, let's take this into account, and then we'll move on. Otherwise, we're getting into trouble with the timing.
But yes, I go to this last issue in core location. Simply, in our specification, there are some labels. It's really a technical issue, I would say. There are some labels that have been added in round brackets, like administrative unit level 1 between brackets you have country, which is also in the definition per se of the property. These labels around brackets have creates problem because they are duplicated into the JSON-LD context, which is an artifact that the CEMIC specification generates out of the publication process. And this doesn't allow member states, or at least developers, if they want to reuse through other services like JSON-LD Playground. So JSON-LD Playground is a service to describe in JSON-LD different type of concepts, like, for example, in this case, location, and the usage of round brackets it creates a problem, so it is not recognized. Therefore, the idea is to remove it from labels, and making sure though that this the label, let's say the round brackets content, is also in the definition or usage note. Simply that. That's I would say an approach that will apply also to other core vocabularies. If we encounter other round brackets, we are going to remove it from the label of the property.
Here.
Just a remark, maybe what you see left there, administrative unit level 1 and between brackets country.
Yeah.
That's the label, the pref label in the RDF definition. What you see on the right between the double quotes, address, point, administrative unit level 1, and then country, that's the mapping label in the JSON context file. So these are two different things. I think you should remove it indeed on the right side. So in the context file, it's maybe can be a problem indeed with the brackets. But if you want in the label, pref label, in RDF, you can keep the country and the country region thing between brackets.
For the time being, the two are related. That's the thing. We can.
Then it's easier to leave it out for the label as well as for the mapping label.
Yeah, that's what happens. Yeah. Okay, but this indeed it was a simple technical issue.
What do you have?
Okay.
So yeah, while we are looking at this from the perspective of a developer, and the space and the parentheses are very bad, of course, but also the dot is bad. If you want to treat this as JSON, you can. There are no problem of having more complex keys. But if you really want to treat this as a nice JSON file, and especially when you parse it into JavaScript, having dots inside the keys in a JSON structure is not really well recommended practice. So I would suggest you use an underscore or a dash instead.
On this part, we can investigate if it's better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on.
Yeah, I move on. I just want to say something. In core location, there is also we didn't see it in the slides. There will be some adjustment also for registered address in here, because the URI of the registered address was wrong, so it will be simply changed, and the new one under the core vocabularies namespace. It's not mentioned through it, but it will be done. I move on the core public organization. Core public organization, as you can see in the diagram, we are also here in version 2.0. We will focus mostly on contact point, plus with opening hour specification and administrative territorial unit for public organization side. I go for on this slide. It's already a bit more complex. Here we are trying to tackle some consistency between CPSVAP and CPOV, core public organization, exactly for the administrative territorial unit class. Currently, we have a relation between public organization and administrative territorial unit via the DCT spatial relation. Usually, in the range of DCT spatial, accept a location percent, which is a bit counterintuitive, I would say, with right now the administrative territorial unit link, let's say, which you see on the bottom highlighted, because in the URI, first of all, we point to an URI of the control vocabulary from publication office. So the idea over there is definitely to change such URI, because it should not, at least it's not consistent with what we do. So administrative territorial unit, let's say, is class, it exists. It exists already as we already seen in core location there. And so the idea is, why not indeed replace administrative unit per se as a class, which is with the one on core location in the admin unit, as we talked about administrative regions to cover into the public organization. And also, especially for the URI, we could reuse the URI for publication office, which are already mentioned at the admin unit class, like you see on the bottom, the resource authority A2 Belgium in this case. That's just as an example. If I'm not clear, I can.
Georgia?
Yeah. which is the property that links the public organization to this admin unit class?
There is no property at this moment. Now, as I said, we have public organization with special to administrative territorial unit. As there are inconsistency because spatial requires a location as range. Administrative territorial unit, as you're right, that is wrong because it points to an how-to of a web page of data developer.eu. So it doesn't really refer to the control vocabulary of the publication office. The idea is why not simply merge, reuse what is already in core location. Since we already have admin unit, we now, with the latest release, we added the code and level. So we can specify Belgian country as a code. And then we just simply use admin unit relation with admin unit.
So it means that a publication organization has like a spatial coverage only for which levels? Municipality, region, and province. I cannot, for example, define more complex spatial coverage of a public organization.
You can, okay, of course, we suggest to use the one from publication office as much as possible. But I can imagine that in different countries, it might have a granularity even more, let's say, more granular than maybe the one of publication office. I can imagine. I don't know. I'm not aware of the
for example, one example can be, this is especially true for public service, okay? An organization like in the health sector can be overlapping between two provinces, probably. So, you know, in that case, there is an area, okay, of spatial coverage in a certain sense. So just thinking aloud and bringing things here.
I also have Ana Rosa with her hand up.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, the I see two different properties of the public organization, and one is the territorial competence. I mean, where this public organization has competence to rule, and the second one is where that public organization is located. But of course, for the first one, the only there is a range. It's not a specific location. It's a range that could be regions, provinces, municipalities, even less than a municipality, or a member state, or even Europe. However, the location where the public organization is located, it could be a geographical coordinate, could be an address, could be many things. But what I would need to point out is that administrative territorial units that has been published by the Public European Office, the publication of European Office, it is aimed at statistical purposes. So yes, I agree that we need to reuse that control vocabulary, but as my previous colleague said, perhaps it does not fit completely well for for a purpose to identify the territorial scope of the administrative competences. So because this is the only one we have, I think that we should stick to this, but with some flexibility to be able to include other territorial competences that are not stick to provinces, municipalities, regions, and countries. That's it.
Okay. So some flexibility there, and also say that Matthias says that in his comment of geonames. And Geert is also his hand up. Geert?
Yes, I shouldn't mix the two here, because the location of a public organization should be expressed like that of any organization. In fact, I think public organization inherits from the class from org, which is organization, and there you have a lot of possibilities to say where exactly is the location of your. You can say it by specifying the how to say, the sites of your organization, the address, and so on and so on. Here, I think is especially meant the jurisdiction of the public organization, where it can operate, what's its, and maybe administrative territorial units is a bit too strict. So indeed, admin unit would be better, but even that, I can imagine that some public organization has some region of operation which extends beyond administrative units. We have a Dutch version of this, an Oslo version of public organization based on CPOV, and there we just used place. Location, in your core location, you have geometry, address, admin unit, and location with a geographical identifier and a geographical name. So maybe it's better to just use the class location here. Location being not location in terms of geometry and so on, or address, but location in terms of a place, a region, which is the actual definition of DC terms location.
True, but in that sense, if you...
Because it's not very flexible now. If you say it has to be administrative territorial units, that's not flexible. If you say it's admin units, it's not flexible either. So maybe better to leave it more generic.
Yeah, but in this case, it's too generic. I mean, we are not, we cannot compare location with an administrative unit. The problem is, what do you mean by administrative? As I said, in the case of the publication office, they mean by administrative statistical territorial units. Matthias said in the chat that GeoNames has also administrative divisions. It's important to know the level of the division, not only I mean, this is the two. For me, it's important not only to know that this public organization is from Buitrago de Lozoya. What I need to know is that Buitrago de Lozoya is a municipality or is a region, or what it is, not only the name. So yes, we need perhaps more flexibility, but not so much flexibility because then we lose the focus on what is the territorial competence.
Yes, but maybe that's just a different problem. You have to do some separation of concerns here. You have just to say, well, this is the coverage of my public organization. This is where it operates, and that's a location. And separately, somewhere else, you have to decide an administrative unit is a specialization, for example, of a place, and an administrative territorial unit is a specialization of admin unit. I don't know, because if you want to find a solution for this problem within the domain of public organization, that will be difficult here. If it's not clear what the difference is between an admin unit, an administrative territorial unit, and a place just as it is, then maybe it's easier to just use place, location for the to give the spatial coverage of a public organization. And to the problem of what is an admin unit, what is a territorial unit, to tackle this in a separate vocabulary.
But this is we are talking about the jurisdiction. I mean, there is the problem is not is administrative unit or administrative territorial unit. It's the same thing. I mean, we are talking about the territorial jurisdiction That's what we are trying to model here. So I would like.
Yeah, but that is modeled in the attribute. In the attribute spatial there, you can put as a definition, this is the description of the jurisdiction of the public organization, the operating region. That you define there. You define it in the attribute, in the association, not in the object that you point to, I think.
Yeah, but we know we need some control vocabulary, because we need to name that. We cannot use coordinates for that. I mean, we need a name. So I would like to know how the administrative divisions of geonames works. Can you explain it, Matthias?
Matthias?
Yeah, sure. So it was some time ago I looked into this, but basically there are a lot of things inside of geonames. Some of them are typed as administrative divisions, and they are, I think they also have a hierarchy. So the interpretation of what is the administrative division level 4 may differ between countries, but there is a range of administrative levels. I would have to look it up exactly what they mean with level 4. But in Sweden, for instance, I mean, our levels are probably not exactly the same as you have in another country, where you have municipality, and then you have some kind of smaller, and then you have an intermediate region. And this is also something that actually changes over time. So. And just pointing to these URIs from geonames solves at least part of the problem. In Sweden, we are trying to encourage certain agencies to provide a vocabulary that is more independent, so we don't have to refer to geonames. On the European scale, we cannot point to, I don't know how many different countries have their own system. So geonames is kind of a good middle ground here, as long as the authority levels of the publication office doesn't cover everything we need.
One more thing, sorry. I remember something when you mentioned it. For us, if we consider this vocabulary to implement an information system in Spain, and you are referring to municipalities, that is not enough for us to represent a user interface, because we have more than 8,100 municipalities. So usually, and some of them have the same name, and of course, users do know nothing about codes. So we normally show them in the hierarchy. So
yes, we do the same.
Yes,
you build a user interface where you can drill down into hierarchy of the administrative levels of the geonames, and there are an API you can use to get this. Then whether you should really integrate with this kind of service, which is not a formal European Commission, I mean, there are issues that there are no good translations into Swedish, for instance, of the municipality names always, not consistently at least. That is a problem when you build user interfaces. Whether you should just mirror that service, provide additional metadata, which is something you can do, would be one option. One other option is to integrate with your own hierarchy of your geographical administrative divisions, and then just refer to the geonames as a same as or close match or something like that.
But indeed, Matthias, the idea of admin unit is to have such way to define your own hierarchy. Of course, if there is already an existing control vocabulary that we see from publication office, we recommend it. But member states can also create their own hierarchy over that. That was the original idea of the admin unit class. As administrative territorial unit, the class existing one, it's just pointing to a simple URI of the A2 administrative territorial unit from publication office. Then that's why the proposal for it, because then you have a better, let's say, structured way to define what is an administrative territorial unit. Now, as of now, the administrative territorial unit should be already, first of all, a control vocabulary, because we point to that in our own OURI and definition. As you can see, the definition is a code from a list. So it should be already a concept per se, or a code, how we refer it here. while spatial points to a sort of location per se. So that's why admin unit, we've seen this as a way to encompass the 2 points, because admin unit has a code and a level, so you can build your own hierarchy.
Yes, but
Georgia?
if you do this, you enforce people to build something here on their own, then you cannot reuse GeoName, for instance, because it doesn't have these properties. I think it's the point of Gert is good also, that you should actually have another property, not just spatial, one that actually tells you that this is about the administrative responsibility of this organization, not just spatial in general. That's the second one.
Yeah, the comment is, I go back to foundational ontologies, sorry for that, but place in the foundational ontology is not necessary a location in terms of spatial object, okay? So something on a map, okay? So here, what we want to represent, what is that? It's the territory, so something that I can write in a map, or I can draw in a map, probably better, saying, look, this public organization acts on these boundaries, okay? That can be a region, that can be a province, that can be a municipality, or 2 municipalities, or 2 provinces, and so on and so forth. If it is like that, I think that spatial is the right property from Dubbing Core. And DCT location probably is, once again, the right type of class. And I don't know if we use DCT location in our core location vocabulary as an extension. So we extend DCT location. I don't know. I don't remember precisely. But in any case, if it is like that, what we mean here, I think we need to go for something which is spatial, you know. If we mean something which is more administrative, okay, in terms of public administration, then spatial is not the right property to be used, and probably not even something that is a location in terms of spatial object, okay. So probably we need the jurisdiction class that was also in core person, at least in the past, I don't know, but something completely different.
On that side,
Here,
Yeah, I agree with the jurisdiction class, but I just wanted to say something about DC terms location. The word location there is the noun. It's not the data type, because a data type would be location can be indicated with coordinates, with everything, with an address, and so on and so on. The DC terms location, it's rather DC terms. It doesn't have the right name actually. It should be place or something, and that's confusing. You can use location as being a location, the place where I am, or you can use location as an indicator of where I am, and that's 2 different things. It's not a good name that DC terms choose for. Okay, it should have been place. Yeah, and I think that gives
criticize other vocabularies.
that gives another criticism, maybe, that you reuse the name location from DC terms for what is actually a place, a municipality, a region, and so on.
Let's not go into that direction, because then we're actually far away from what we're actually trying to achieve here.
Okay.
I want to make a point.
But Max, sorry.
I just want to.
But this, yeah, I just want to clarify one point. Yeah, the city location put together something which is spatial and something which is a named region, okay? Which is something like spatial and something like place, okay? In fact, in another foundational ontology, there is this concept of location that put in place something which is spatial and something that is really not spatial like place, okay? But that reminds you a location, okay? So actually, the city term location is is a very important, let me say, concept, okay, and it's so correct from my point of view in Dublin Core. The only thing that we needed to understand, if this spatial is only the spatial coverage, then we need really a spatial object there.
Okay, but I just wanted to interrupt here because we're running completely out of time. So we have still, we're about half an hour late, and I just wanted to see Emilio. I guess this whole area of administrative units is an issue that we can't actually solve today. We could talk another
I don't think there is full agreement on this. No, I don't think indeed there is agreement.
No, so I think we should just probably organize another way of solving this, having this a separate discussion to take into account the various proposals, the various comments, to make sure that we have a solution that can find agreement amongst the group. So I wanted to say here that we just stop the discussion here, that we're going to provide a possibility to continue the discussion offline, and maybe in the future have a separate meeting for that. But for the time being, I'd like to move forward.
Yeah, we can continue the discussion on GitHub, definitely. Okay.
Definitely, we would like to ask for the people that commented to put their comments into GitHub so that we can facilitate the discussion at a later, at a different moment.
Okay, I go next slide then. But this issue, I would say, it's again for consistency with the CPSVP and Core Public Organization. In alignment with the CPSVP, it was added a contact page as a property in contact point. We are going then to add the contact page as a property and contact point class. So you will see that the contact page will be added, which basically it's a way to reach out to the contact point as a matter of fact. So the change will be on the contact on the additional contact page attribute. And I believe on this there is not much. Should not be too much discussion on this point. But we can, if there is any other point, we can go over on GitHub and continue on this. If you don't mind, I go on to the next slide, which requires a bit of more discussion. Okay. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. That's another issue, again, with which has an impact on CPSVP. The original request of this issue is to change the URI or availability restriction. Availability restriction is a relation, as you can see on top, between a contact point and the opening hour specification. Currently, the URI is hours available, and the request is to change to special opening hour specification. That's the original request. However, here we are trying to tackle also another important aspect. As you can see from the top to the bottom, from front and to, the proposal is also to change the class opening hour specification, the temporal entity. That's the idea, is to, first of all, to combine with what will happen in core public event, where the timing aspect is really crucial. And also with the fact that we have we want to focus on temporal entity to provide, let's say, properties like description in this case, that will give the freedom to describe opening hours or special opening hours in a free text way. So giving also that freedom. Temporal entity is a class that comes from W3C, the time ontology, and so which allows to express a period of time, like beginning as an end, or even instance. So there are already concept or data type that can be reused over time. It can be really quite structured. So the idea is, yes, to keep opening hours and availability restriction. Opening hours make it more a relation towards the temporal entity, because right now, as you can see, it's a literal. So you cannot even structure more than that. It's a simply free text. And but at the same time, if people want that as a free text, add this description property under temporal entity. So given the freedom anyhow to, if really people wanted to describe opening hour or a value restriction in a more let's say free text way. Otherwise, they can still use a more structured way, which comes from the temporal entity class. So as I said, temporal entity can allows let's say to define an instant or an interval of time. So you can have different ways to express such, let's say, periods with different type of properties that you can go there. What we add there is a description and a frequency. This will be dealt in a core public event anyhow. But the idea is to keep the special opening hour specification. Let's say the special opening hour specification URI for sure, and to change that URI, but also to change the opening hours as relation towards the temporal entity class.
Okay.
Is it
clear?
I don't know if, yeah, I hope it's been clear. If not, I repeat. And
If there are no comments here, then maybe we'll just move on.
okay, thanks a lot. Ideally, there should be 5 minutes a short break. I don't know, Max, if since you told me that we are late, I wonder if it's better to proceed next to the.
I think it's better to proceed because we're about a half an hour late.
Okay. Okay, then we go to the next section. The next section is about the core public event. Core public event, it's relatively new compared to the other core vocabularies. However, in core public event has already some historical reason to exist. The notion of public event, which is quite spread. We include conferences over there, festival, and many other concepts. And the public administration, the idea of, let's say, formalized public event is to help public administration having a common way to describe such type of events. We started a long time ago to define the initial use cases for public event, like I want to find event per se as a citizen. I want as a business as well. I would like to find my have opportunity for me to participate in local events. I want to find also related events or be able to import this event in my own personal calendar. So there was a list of the initial use cases, which we brought in forward because, as you can see from this slide, on the time in 2018, we already created the first draft of core public event, version 04, so it's really a draft. And we, in the last year, as of January, we took in account different use cases, also this different description of public events, which were published on data.eu, and some bilateral discussion with certain member states, which to see if the community is still alive and to see if there is a really indeed interest today to present, let's say, or to discuss certain parts of the public event. And so after the first webinar, the idea is to really formalize it, having a public review of, and official release afterward. So I go next to the now draft, as I said, in version 04, where you have a public event in the middle and certain concepts on the left and on the right, like timing, place, offer, ticket, audience, and agent. I'm going to tackle them one by one. With mostly focus on the classes first, and instead of the properties of public event. Let's say the properties will come towards the end of the presentation, because at least we want to assess what are the main needs that should be there in the core public event. First of all, the definition of public event, which is been tackled partially in issue 4 and 6. It has to be said that the publication office already provided a definition of the event. As you can see, it's defines public event that happens a particular place and time. So let's say the The space and time are important, of course, organized by an agent for a particular purpose, and the interest for a general audience, with excluding natural events and earthquake, like earthquakes on hurricanes. So, the proposed definition here is a bit changed. That's why this slide should be changed person. Because this is not really the latest version. What we are going to propose here is to change slightly the definition of publication office, changing from one or more agent, because now the definition of publication office is just by an agent. As we are in Core Vocabularies, we don't want to impose a restriction on cardinalities. So the idea is to change just that part and not the public person. But only the part of the agent, which because you can have more one agent organize such events. And so, of course, out of this definition, we exclude natural events like earthquakes or hurricanes, and also non-public event from such a definition. Is it clear? Because the slides has to be, I can retake it back. I can move forward. Yeah.
Anna Rosa is asking about the topic of the public event. I don't know.
Sorry? Anna Rosa?
Anna Rosa.
Yes,
The topic of the public event.
yes, I was asking if you are thinking on modeling the topic of the public events. So Matthias, for example, said that there was some reference to the scope concept or something like that.
Yeah.
But there is,
there
are, yeah, please.
Go ahead.
We can look, we can look, yes. We can look at different types of public events, and this is one of the properties that the public event will have. So that's it's another story. Here it's about, okay, we can agree on such a definition, which was already published by the publication office, where we simply changed by one or more agent, because then we want to restrict the cardinality over there. If it's okay, then we can proceed to the other type of concept, let's say, which are in the draft.
I have a question.
Matthias?
Yes, please.
When you have like an RSS feed or something of things that's happening, which there are examples of, you typically have something like a channel and you sort by time. But what Anna is suggesting is that we have another way of looking at upcoming events, or filtering by category, maybe keywords and other things, but also the idea of grouping them. If you compare with DCAT AP, you have a way of saying, here comes the data catalog, and the data sets inside of it belongs to that data catalog. Here you just have a bunch of events that have some characteristics. Do you want to group them by some mechanism, like a channel? Historically, that has been a successful approach. I'm just saying, I'm wondering if there are any thoughts about this.
There are some thoughts, not exactly as a channel, but there are some thoughts. I can see them in the next slides. Let's say later in the slides. There are different slides on these parts, so we can maybe discuss over there.
Question from Sebastian: does public event also include commercial events?
If it's from public organization organizing events, it depends on the nature of the event, I would say. If it's a business, I would say no, not really. But this is to support public administration in publishing events.
Okay, so it's not for commercial events. Okay, go on.
Yeah. Next slide. Yeah. This issue is related to unplanned events. At the really early stage of the draft of the public event, we were putting cardinalities on when an event starts or ends. Now, in alignment with the other core vocabularies, where we don't restrict put cardinalities, we will keep the restriction open in general, so it's possible to describe an event without yet plan it or without putting as a timing per se, because you should not be, let's say, you might not be aware yet when the date of the event will happen. So that's in terms of planning events. So the proposition is simply to keep the cardinality open, like other vocabularies, and so it's possible to define later on when an event will start or ends.
Okay.
If it's okay, I go next.
Yeah, there are some questions about the definition again, whether the definition says that there are those events organized by a public organization, or are these events that just are open to the public? And I think it's the second one, because the definition doesn't say who those agents are, but it says
Yes.
that it's relevant for a general audience.
Indeed, it's correct. In that sense, it's more for general audience. The support that we are trying to do here in the creation of propaganda is to help public administration in doing organizing or publishing events. The characteristic of the event per se, we can maybe face it in the event type that you let's say on the classification of the event per se, if you want to maybe put in that direction. Yeah.
Georgia?
If I have a public administration participating in a commercial event, and that public administration, I mean, it decides to document their presence in that commercial event organized by some economic operator, I don't know, for some reasons. Is this out of scope, or potentially can be used? Means that organizing is a different role than participating, okay, in a certain way, this question.
I think this is out of scope. I think what we're talking about is public events, not just any event that a public organization is involved in, even if it's a commercial event. So
Okay.
it's for public events
Okay,
that are open to the public. Okay.
Okay.
Move on.
Yeah.
Emilio?
Yes.
Geert has his hand up. Geert? Yes.
Just to add something, for the definition of event, it would be interesting to look at CDOC CRM, which is an ontology where this is very well defined. And there, actually, events are a bit broader than it's defined here. An event does not necessarily involves agents that participate or that organize, or it's just something that happens with some result, of course.
Indeed, Gert, there are.
This is more like activities, what you're modeling here.
But it's
a bit more precise.
Narrower than the event of CDOC CRM.
Yes, okay.
There are many other, indeed, events ontology and models in that sense. Of course, we try to look at them. There is no always one solution, but yeah, no, I'm aware of also this one. We try to take into account when possible, of course.
Okay.
In this issue, it's about which is about tickets. During our let's say bilateral with the part of the community on public event. It was requested to basically there was no really interest in define or having tickets in a core model like core public event, because indeed when you define tickets you can incur in many definitions or many granularity levels. So sometimes you can define tickets for elders or children, families. So that's should not be really the intention of a core model to enter in all this granular level. So the idea is indeed to remove from the original draft the concept of offer and ticket. Is indeed a requirement on going to that level of granularity are really not defined from the scope of the core public event.
Okay.
If it's okay, then we can move to another.
Move to the next one.
Next one.
Kulgara has a comment on the chat.
Yeah, that's another comment on the definition of when the event becomes a public event. Does that have to do with who organizes it? And I think that's correct. And the idea is that I think we probably need to go back to the definition and make sure that it's clear. Although, in my opinion, definitions always need to be a little bit flexible, so that we can actually play around with that and just make sure that we have the right properties and the associations in it. But I would not want to go too deep into trying to get the definition exactly right. But of course, we'll take into account the comments that are being made in the chat.
Okay.
Go on.
Next
point.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me a second.
Go ahead.
I'm
Next.
trying. Yeah. Please. Yes. I go next. Identification of the events in the events, of course, should be identified by their own by certain properties, I would say. Like a title of events is something that normally it's required to describe to make the name of the event, or even topics like what the event will deal with. So the proposition is to keep the title of the public event, to indicate the name given to the event, so which was in the original draft. Add an identifier for it. That's an addition to the original one, in order to distinguish unequally an event from another one. We've seen different cases of public events published on data.ru, where there is a sort of ID, unique ID, it is used to identify a unique event. So that's the proposition, to add identifier, and then to add a topic, so to specify the main subject of the events. Of course, we can have different topics because the granularity is open. So the idea is to deal with this issue, let's say, by adding these three properties: title, identifier, and topic, to have better, let's say, identification of the events.
Okay. If there's no comments, then Matthias.
Yeah, so very quickly, topic, do we foresee to, in this case, provide a list of well-defined topics to select from, like European level, indoor event, outdoor event, mixed event, very granular, or more specific skiing event, information event regarding something? So there could be so many different things. Maybe just keep it, leave it open for now, or what?
Yes, the idea is to keep it open. This is different from the format of the public event, which could be, for example, physical or virtual one. You see, so the topic is really like you said, skiing, but it could be, I don't know, machine learning, or can be any other type of topic that an event could deal with. You see.
Yeah, I would just suggest that you complement with the possibility of adding keywords, because it's kind of hard sometimes to find the good terminology to use for topics.
Okay.
Sebastian?
Yeah, thank you. I just discovered this core vocabulary. I want to say I only can see the version from 2018 on the Git, if it's not intended. And
correct.
Two
Now
questions.
it's only the old version. Yeah.
Okay. And will languages play a role? So can I express there's a virtual standardization workshop going on in Germany, open to the public, but English will be the language. And the virtual thing, whether we will say online face-to-face or hybrid, whether this plays a role.
Yeah, if we want to express in different language, then you can still use, for the time being, you can still use the, let's say, the description in different languages. You see, because now there's a text as data type, you could define in which language you want to describe published event. But if you think that there is a really need for a language of the event per se, that's an idea we could add such a property. It's not right now taught, but we could. For the format of the event, as I said, you can use the format as a code, describe if it's virtual, physical, or even hybrid.
Yeah, regarding the language, me as a German, I have the English or not use case, but you as a Belgian, I thought you will have French meetings for the French community. So for me, it would only be to tag English or German at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, we take this into account. Okay, I go next maybe, if it's okay.
Go.
Yeah, I skip some certain slides because I would like to talk about the classes at this moment in time. In the original draft of the core public event, we were using the place class which was coming from schema.org at that time. The idea is indeed to, first of all, as I already mentioned, to difference between physical and virtual location, think about accessibility of the event, and also having multiple locations for to deal with this issue and about place. For us, first of all, is to combine public event with address class, which it's already used over there to describe a physical location of the event. We already have in core location the concept of address, so it's more natural to link a public event with address for physical location. However, and the idea is to keep the format of property of the event, to specify if the event will be a virtual one or to be a physical one. So in that case, if you have the physical, you can still use the address for that aspect. If you want to use for a virtual one, there will be other properties like the home page of the event, for example, will come afterward. And then the idea is also to keep accessibility as a property, to identify what are the accessibility parts of the events, or let's say what will make it accessible for it. This could be, for the time being, is a text property, but we want to keep it because I think it's still important to describe this concept. And of course, like for other vocabulary, do not impose cardinalities, because now you see that the event, let's say in the original draft, the event has minimum one location, multiple one. If the event is, of course, virtual one, it will have just maybe a home page for it, where people will connect to. But you can have, of course, multiple location of an event. If an event is on national scale, but it's distributed over a territory, of course, it has to be on multiple locations. So with these issues, we would like to deal with about the concept of place, of physical location, and virtual one.
Okay.
Okay, I go next. In the hierarchy of events, it was a bit mentioned by, I think, Sebastian on that. With this issue, we are dealing with the events relation. So having a relation in a hierarchy, sometimes it happens because you have generic festival or which are basically put in the territory, like I said before, on different sub events. But also over time, you could have a generic event that encompass different events over time. So the idea is to depict what is a hierarchy between events. We had already in the past a sub-event relation. So an event, a public event is sub-event on another one. Here we want to keep supporting sub-event. Of course, we want to keep that proper relation, but also adding the parent one, because then from an event can be a parent of another as well. So we would like to have a bit more, propose another relation in order to support the case if you start from a sub-event, you would like to describe also the parent one or link to a parent.
Okay. Georgia?
Yeah.
What about that next event and previous event?
There is the next slide.
Okay, sorry.
If it's okay, I can go to the next slide.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I go to the more than time dimension where I did the next event in previous one. I put there in the slide to combine the two. The idea is indeed to add. I have a better, more opportunity describe an event in different date formats because before we were using date time or different data types. So just not the day. We don't want to use just the day, but not even the hour. So the idea is to replace the time in that moment to replace with the temporal entity, which I mentioned before when we were discussing core public organization. The temporal entity, as I already mentioned, allows to define instance of periods and also different type of time formats. That's the idea. So we have something that is more powerful coming from the W3C time ontology. In order to describe though an event, a temporal entity, let's say the timing, we added the description as a property. So it's easy for people to describe it without being too, let's say, entering into really more granular level. You can still describe it, and adding a frequency. So a frequency of the event, which is not really so explicit in time ontology. So in order to describe events they can be on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, or for example annual conferences. So the frequency of the events, and such frequency of it's already explicit in as a code on publication office. So we can leverage that code to describe the frequency of the event. Of course, that's at least at the basis. And in case of recurrent events, that was connected to what Georgia was mentioning. The idea is to, first of all, at the basis, to add a relation between an event and another as a next or previous event. So events can be connected between each other in among if you want to create a series of events. So you can say this event is the next one or the previous one of another. So that's the idea of how to deal with the time dimension of the event in this case.
Okay, so you don't have an order between these events. So it's not, so a next can be a next after two events, okay, from the first one. Okay, so you don't have an order and you don't impose any order, okay. Is that correct?
But the order, in a way, it's the relation. In a way, this one is the next one of the other, but you are not saying this is the second one at this moment in time. There is another issue, let's say, about this in terms of addition of the event, but it's not really a specific order. Here we try to make an order in a way. This comes before the another one in terms of next.
So you have the order with the time in a certain way.
Yeah, as in one after each other. Yes, that's
okay.
Over time.
Okay.
That's the minimum I think we can do to support how events are described. Let's say happening one after each other. Yeah. Okay. If it's okay, yeah, I can move.
But the frequency is the frequency of the event, of the frequency of the time. I don't know.
The frequency, yeah, because if an event happens, for example, on a certain date, on a certain date, sometimes when you describe an event, you can say it happens on every Thursday, right? Thursday of the month. So this is the frequency that you would define there. I would say you would like to define an event every the first Monday of the month. So each month, basically. So that's the frequency of the event in that sense.
Or the semi-conference takes place every year.
Yeah.
So another approach would be to define a class called event series and reference yeah, the event to the event series. Would be alternatively to having a lot of next events relations.
Yeah.
Would make it more flexible when it comes to listing things, perhaps.
Yes, but this is, I would say, it's a more. I would consider it's an additional part, because even though it creates an event series, you still not define how the which one, let's say, in time is coming next or previous. You still have to define it somehow a link between each other, even though you can encompass a public, let's say, a series of event or a generic public event, let's say, at the generic level. I would say this should be the minimum in terms of timing part of the event, in terms of how the events can be linked between each other.
Okay. Okay, Media, we have another 10 minutes for you.
Yeah, thank you. I go to the next one. It's about contact point. It was requested to have a contact point for a public event. So the idea is to reuse as much as possible the contact point that is coming from core public organization into it. We already discussed, let's say, the contact point previously. And so the idea is to have a contact point for that public event, and which is also can be connected with a temporal entity. So when a contact point is when is available, when it's not, so it has opening hours. So it can be referred a period basically of time eventually when the contact point is available or not. That's an option, of course. But as we bring from the core public organization, we can reuse the contact point class simply for core public event. And I think we can go next slide if it's okay for you. Yeah. One important step here is to distinguishing active and passive participants. There can be different roles, and this we had already in the past in a core public event, where we depict the concept of organizer, sponsor, or promoter. So the idea is to consolidate these type of roles, because you can have many roles indeed when organizing a public event. So the idea is to reuse already a method for CPSVP, which is the participation class. Participation per se, in CPSVP was used to describe how certain actors participate in the life of a public service. But if we refine, of course, the definition, we could use the same concept of participation into the public event. So this participation could embed also the concept of role it embeds already the role in the public service profile. So over there, you can describe any type of role that let's say an agent in this case, because you see the agent can play a role, participate in a public event. So as we already have participation class in CPSVP, I think it's strategically to put participation. And then thanks, Georgia, for indeed reminding this, because indeed participation class is already in CPSVP. So we can have the concept of role into this by adding participation and the respective role into it, leaving, of course, the freedom to choose the type of role in an event, because as I said, there can be too many. It doesn't make any sense to create a list of them and just adding them as a relation, as we were doing already in the first draft. But we consolidate this as a participation class within a role property.
Okay.
And basically, we can add also the temporal entity to it, the timing aspect of this participation, if people want it, because that's an optional relation. So if it's fine, I can go to other slides.
I think that the relation between the participation and the agent should go in the different other direction. You don't want to have a lot of triples. Yeah, it should be pointing from the participation should refer to both the temporal entity and the agent, not the opposite.
So what you are saying is the direction plays a role from agent to participation should be inverted. It's played by, you know, the participation played as an agent.
Exactly, played by. Yes, would
Some
make
sort
more
of,
sense.
some sort of.
Yeah.
We can look at it. It's I'm not. We can look at it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I go back to other slides which are also important. It's they concern more the classification of events, and that's what we were already discussing a bit before. It's about for whom this event, and that's the audience part, is direct for, and also the type of event. So now we have already an event classification published by the Publication Office, which is for us, it's the original basis for it to classify an event. There is already an initial list of the events over there. Then we can see if this list is not enough, we can propose to the Publication Office to enrich it with more classification. And also as you see, the property audience, to classify the type of audience. Here we don't restrict any type of code in that sense, because we leave the member states to implement such type of classification. We need to see if there is a real need to it, but public events can have different type of audience too, as a type of roles, and like we said before. So the idea is to have a code to identify minimum, a code what kind of audience you will expect. You expect maybe families, you expect a certain group of peoples. That's an idea.
Sebastian
Sebastian?
raised his hand.
Yeah, perhaps you can help me again on the scope. So university courses that happens in a moment on time for students, they are not public events in the sense, or are they?
But they are the audience is restricted to the people. I cannot access as me as now as a person. I cannot access to this kind of
open
event
for students,
because only the students. Yeah, but it's really restricted at that point in time, because normally a public event is anybody is welcome to enter.
Okay, but so only to tell you that there is a need. I know about universities, pan-European university organizations that look for a format how to exchange exactly this. Yeah, that the courses happening in how to access, and perhaps one could make a profile also for public or universities. Or, well, I see that there's a need. Just to say this.
Okay, thank you. If you want to, I can proceed to the next slide.
You have 2 minutes.
I go to the next one, and then for the other issues we can deal on GitHub. Okay. So on this slide, I try to deal with different properties of the public event. First of all, a detailed information public event, so which can be kept in a description property, giving the people to describe, giving more details about this event. Then in the original public event, we have the property URL, which doesn't say too much per se in terms of the meaning of this URL. So the idea is to distinguish between a known page and a registration of the event. So the home page, in case you have virtual events, also you have a known page where you have the point to access to it, but also a registration page, so where people can say, okay, I would like to register, where I should go. So indicate where need the page where I can ask for attendance. And that's a bit linked to what I was mentioning before, with proposed by Georgia, is the really the event number. However, the event number that you see here, it's an integer. We would like to propose more text, because in the original request, I don't want to say only the fourth in the terms of number, but I can have an edition, which could be of the year. For example, I want to have the annual conference CEMIC, for example, in this case, is 2022. And for us, that's for us, but that could be the case, to specify the edition of the event, which was the original request. So it's more an edition than really a sequence number. So the idea is to change integer that was proposed originally here into the text, And so in order to be more flexible, to decide if it is being a number or simply a textual representation of it.
Okay, so I think
It's
time's
okay.
up.
Yeah.
Time's up.
So I do have
So if
other.
there's any
We do have
comment?
other issues. I move forward towards the end.
Okay.
First of all,
yeah.
I would like to thank you for attending this webinar. I think that a lot of things very interesting were described here, even coming up from the slide of the administrative unit. I think there is a lot of interest there, and we will highly appreciate if you can put your comments into GitHub so that we can come up with a firm decision on this. I also believe that based on the comments that you made it for a public event, I take it as a silence consent on go forward to this the official publication of core public, because we never asked for an official permission, but I think that the interest is high, and we can finally proceed on this, because we don't need to finalize the work that was left pending in 2018. As we said, the intention of tackling issues about core location was core public organization was also related to the forthcoming event, the 7th of November on CPSV AP. So we will highly appreciate, even for those issues that are related to CPSVAP, to provide your comments in the chat. I will also highly appreciate if you can put some comments into GitHub for the issues that we haven't been able to deal due to lack of time on regarding core public event. Emidio, Max, would you like to comment on this one?
No. I think we dealt with many issues. There are small issues left. I think one or two even. So we can continue, as I said, on GitHub, as you said, Paulina. And the important thing that we already discussed the main ones, which allows us to create at least the first release on this.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think it's important also to note that there were fundamental issues, I think, on the location and addresses. So that's something we have some homework that you gave us to look, for example, at the guidance of Inspire. And there were some comments also on the time aspects, and I think also Emilio, we need to come back to that and also make sure that those comments are taken into account. And if there's any more discussion necessary, we can take that discussion on GitHub. So feel free to go there and provide your further comments, and then on the basis of that, we are going to provide some proposals of how to handle those things.
Just to emphasize on this is as we are also working and we have as a basic consolidated diagrams, and since the core vocabularies are like a communicating vessels, it's important for us to come up with a firm decision, and to complement also that if you feel that there are important issues that were not captured during today's discussion that has to do with the core public event, please highlight those so that we can also tackle them during a forthcoming webinar, perhaps in the near future. But here, as you can see, is the plan or of our forthcoming webinars. Thank you so much for attending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yiğit, please keep
Yes.
the chat.